Shalom. In Matthew chapter 18, we read that Simon Peter asked Yeshua a question that many of us have asked ourselves and even asked God over and over. How many times am I responsible to forgive someone? Isn't there a limit? I guess Peter thought that 7 times was surely being generous, but Yeshua said we are to forgive 70 times 7. What does this actually mean, and what might these numbers represent? Thank you.
Well, thank you for this question. Let us first read Matthew chapter 18, verses 21 to 22, where Yeshua speaks of forgiveness and when and how many times should we forgive. So it says, then Peter, in verse 21, then Peter came to him and said, Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Up to 7 times? And Jesus said to him, I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. So the question is, how often shall we forgive? Is there a limit of the number of times? Peter limited it to 7 times, but why 7? And where did he get this number from? He must have referred to what Yeshua just previously in Luke chapter 17, verse 4, where he says, and if he, your brother, that is, sins against you 7 times a day, and 7 times in a day returns to you, saying, I repent, you shall forgive. So Peter, like many of us, must have used selective hearing and chose to register only part of what Yeshua said. It is not 7 times in total, but 7 times a day. That is what Yeshua said. That is all the time, every day, every hour, every minute. And this is what the Messiah stresses in Matthew 18, using the number 70 times 7, which is really 490 times. But why use this number of 70 times 7? By using this number, Yeshua extends the use of forgiveness until he comes back. How do we come to this conclusion? The figure 70 times 7 refers to the prophecy of Daniel, which was very well known at that time. The prophecy of Daniel, found in Daniel chapter 9, verses 24 to 27, gives a full account of the 2 comings of the Messiah. He even gives a date of the first coming. This is why many expected the Messiah at the time of Jesus. It was then when the first Jewish false Messiah, the first one, also appeared, and even Josephus refers to Daniel's prophecies to explain this rise of false messiahs. However, the second coming of the Messiah is also prophesied, and it is in the way Daniel spoke about it that will help us to understand what Yeshua meant when he said 70 times 7. The whole prophecy is made of 490 years, of not consecutive years, but it is divided into different parts. We've gone through 483 years, that is. These have run out. There are 7 years left to these prophecies, which correspond to the 7-year tribulation times, which is about to begin, I believe, very soon, saying what is happening in the world. So for now, let us just read verse 24, the first verse of Daniel's prophecies, where we find this number 70 times 7.
70 weeks are determined for your people and for your holy city, to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy.
So 70 times 7, Shavurim Sheverim, is 70 times 7 times. And so it is here where we find this number, which leads us to the second coming of the Messiah, which will bring us to the end of sin and to the everlasting righteousness. So when Yeshua used this number, which was well known at the time, he was simply saying, forgive until I come back. 7 is the number of spiritual perfection and completeness. We remember that in Hebrew, 7 is Sheva, from the root Sava, which means to be full, to be satisfied. And we see in the list of Daniel 9:24, we have 7 prophecies which will be fulfilled in 70 times 7 years when Yeshua comes back. So Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me, and how often shall I forgive him? Again, we consider Jesus' answer, until he comes back. We are to keep forgiving until then. So let's not count, but just forgive. We're expected, in fact, to forgive each time, just like Paul says in 1 Corinthians 13, the chapter of love, in verse 5. He says, love keeps no record of wrongs. This is, by the way, an accounting term, but we are not called to be accountants, but loving brothers, to love, that is, our brothers and sisters instead, and covering their transgressions with the love of God.